Look at you've got the blue and white.
I do. Well, this is actually one of my most prized possessions. I got this probably 15 years ago. It fit a little bit better back then, but yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna put my my Town shirt on, but it doesn't fit. So I thought I'm not gonna do that. It's been a tough.
It happens. I can get it on. Don't get me wrong. I can get it on. It's still worth going out in public in, but it's just not quite as nice. Now that's a beauty right there.
That's from the year we got promoted.
Yeah. Man.
From the 2017 year. So
yeah, I assume those are signatures. I can see.
Those are signatures. Well, I hope they were. Yeah. Jerry, I have been so excited to talk to you all day. So thank you so much for doing this.
If you're a Huddersfield Town fan living in Alabama, you say yes whether it's going to be recorded or not. Like, it doesn't have to be a podcast. James, if you want to just talk on Zoom for 45 minutes about Huddersfield Town, yeah, sign me up, man. Let's go. It's been an incredible season, obviously. It is, I would say, I think a unique experience being a Huddersfield Town supporter in Northport, Alabama. It's a state of more than 4 million people. And if there is another Town fan in this state, I have not found them yet. They do not have a social media presence. They have not made themselves known to me. I don't see any Town shirts walking around the streets of Northport or Birmingham or Montgomery. It just does not happen. So, I would say it's an interesting experience, but it's one that, I've enjoyed immensely. I can definitely get into how all of that happened. But, it's obviously a great time to be a Huddersfield Town fan, and there's no club I would rather support.
Jerry, I have to ask, how the hell does someone from Alabama become a Huddersfield Town fan?
Yeah, so I grew up in Alabama. Here's a fun fact. I don't think it was probably fated for me to become a Huddersfield Town fan, but it's possible because I was born in the same hospital as Dwayne Holmes. He was born at Fort Benning Army Hospital in Columbus, Georgia. I was born at Fort Benning Army Hospital in Columbus, Georgia. So, if you know about, Dwayne Holmes, he's an, U.S. national side player, or he should be anyway. Hasn't gotten a cap for a little bit, which I have a little bit of a bone to pick with, the U.S. coaches on that point. But anyway, it starts with John Thorrington, actually. I think Town fans of a certain age probably remember Mr. Thorrington. He was an American prospect, joined Town in the late 90s. And back then, if you were an American, I say soccer fan because, like, in this country, that's just the way my brain works. Like, the sport here is soccer. Over there, it's football. I try to keep them straight that way. So just bear with me if I use the S word here and there. But as an American soccer fan back in the late 90s, anybody who went to play in Europe was like monitored very closely. It's not like now where we've got, 100 different kids across 20 different leagues. Back then, even though, obviously Town, I think, in League One at the time, was not a team that many people in the States, no one in the States was following before Thorrington arrived. The fact that he was there, made them sort of like something of a concern. And I was frequenting this message board at the time, and somebody posted a link to a website. I never quit reading the site. Like, it was just so funny. It's like, this is also, I was in college at the time, so I needed something to waste a lot of time with. And HDFC World became like my number one go-to. Turn on the browser, go there, hit refresh. Let's see if we've got a new report. And so after like literal years of this, eventually we kind of came up to the playoff final against Mansfield to get out of League Two, get back into League One. And I was like, it was, I think it was a Monday morning, if I remember correctly. And I got up and I was like, oh man, yeah, the Huddersfield playoff finals today. I wonder if there's a way I could listen to that on the internet radio. And I found a stream from the BBC. And it was just kind of one of those like, I should probably do this. And so I turned on this internet radio stream and I'm listening to it. And I realized that I'm like rooting for Huddersfield. Like, this isn't just something I'm interested in. Like, it's something I'm invested in. Like, come on, guys, let's do this. I've seen all the players not in person, I have no idea what their actual faces look like. To me, they're, Danny's little, like, pale circles, on top of just like, computer head or computer bodies or whatever. But, I wanted them to do it. And, so they do. They win the penalty shootout. Liam Lawrence screws everything up. It's great. And at the end of that, I was like, yeah, I think this is something is happening here. I think I told you in an email, like my, favorite player from like the Lee Clark era is Alan Lee, pretty much just because he scored the goal against Arsenal, there at the Emirates, or I think it was still at.
I think it was the Emirates.
Okay, well, had they built the Emirates by that point? I'm blanking on Arsenal's previous ground's name.
I think about 2010, you might be saying.
Yeah. So, just him scoring that and running away in celebration, it's like, yes! Just being able to watch the team, was just such a moment of joy for me, rather than having to go through like, well, let me find out what the scores were. And so come the 2016-2017 season, I felt like that was where I went from following them to being a supporter.
How many other Town fans do you think are in America, Jerry? I mean, I'm sure there'll be a few on probably the east and west coast, but
yeah.
Do you think how many do you reckon there are?
I have no idea. We do exist. Let me say that. They're on the Twitters. I follow one very nice woman who's an FC Cincinnati fan and a Huddersfield Town fan living there in Cincinnati. But man, it's probably, I'm going to guess under 1,000 probably. Maybe that might even be high. Maybe I'm overrating it because I happen to be one. And, okay, so there's one in Northport. There's at least one in Atlanta. Surely New York, there's got to be like dozens, right? So I'm going to say around 1,000, but I honestly, I don't know. In the South, though, it's not like it is in New York. It's not going to be the way it is out on the West Coast, where soccer, is just kind of a way of life for not just, the number of weirdos who, grew up watching the World Cup. And, it was pretty much just me in Dadeville, Alabama, who understood that, like, the World Cup was a soccer tournament that they play every 4 years, and that the United States has a team that competes in it. Like, this was wild, arcane knowledge. And fortunately, that's changed in a lot of ways. But for me, I've always been a little bit of a fish out of water, when it comes to soccer in some ways. And, so rooting for Huddersfield Town now, in some ways, it's just an extension of that. I've been the weirdo all my life. So I'll just be the weirdo on that front for a little while longer.
So then, yeah, we get to the Wagner years. So how did you keep following the club and supporting it?
Most importantly, iFollow arrived, and I got to actually listen to Paul Augie and Matt Glennon, call the games, and then also David Wagner arrived, and rather than just sort of checking in on Town and hoping they're doing okay and going to hang around, in the championship. Now it's like, okay, we've got something real here. Like, we aren't just treading water and hoping to stick around in this tier. We're going to actually move forward. And so, I splurged for my iFollow, membership or whatever. I started turning on those broadcasts on Saturday mornings. I had time to just sit there. And, I feel like if that, the League Two playoff final was sort of the first big step in my fandom. The game where Hefela scores the goal to beat Leeds 2-1, and Wagner runs down the touchline, and again Augie's going nuts on the radio. That's sort of the big part too. Like, I scared the cats out of the room. Like, I screamed. My wife's asking what is going on up there. Like, I have like this office sort of upstairs in our house a little bit, and by now my family's kind of gotten used to like these random, screams and banging and noises that happen, on Saturday mornings or sometimes weekday afternoons because Town have scored or done something terrific. But that was kind of the first one where, it went from being, okay, do you have a club, that you support? And I'll say, oh yeah, I'm a Huddersfield Town fan, to, do you have a club you support? And it's like, oh, I'm living and dying with Huddersfield Town, and it's really been like every weekend, as often as they play those midweek games, I'm there in spirit, in terms of the actual stadium, but, here in front of my computer, in front of my screens, watching the boys. And it's just, it's been a special thing for me, honestly. Like, even the last couple of seasons, obviously before this one, were not the best, but I watched every minute of them lose to Wycombe Wanderers 3-2. I'm in it for the long haul. I am #TTID. It's I didn't really expect that investment to pay off again quite so quickly. And I, again, having visited the JSS a little while back, having sort of made some online friends, who support the club, it's just, I'm honestly like very grateful that Danny G way back in the day decided he was going to draw some cartoon match reports because, it's really made my life as a sports fan like so much better to have this connection with the club.
Let's talk about the playoff final. 2017, Schindler's penalty, which got us promotion to the Premier League. Where were you watching it?
Watched the game by myself up here, but maybe that was for the best. When Schindler scored, I kind of saw stars a little bit, honestly. I don't want to say I almost blacked out, but I did have to kind of like take a breath and sit down because the rush of adrenaline, was such that like this has only happened a couple of times in my life. One, the huge kick six between Auburn and Alabama. The most famous play in college football actually happened to my team, Auburn, against their arch rivals. If you Google kick six, you'll find it. It happened then. It happened when Schindler scored. I just kind of ran around the room. I think I knocked things off of my desk. I, think I maybe pulled something off the wall. I don't even know really exactly what happened. I do remember having eventually to just sit down and take a breath because it's like, I just, when I started following Huddersfield Town, it's sort of this idea like, oh, well, even though they're down in League One and League Two, maybe they, eventually they'll probably win promotion to the championship. Lots of teams do. They just stick at it. They'll get to the championship. Maybe, they could get up into the Premier League one day before I die. I know it's been years and years and years since they've been in the top tier, but, it's not crazy. Blackpool managed it. Bournemouth managed it. Surely Town can manage it too. Maybe one day. I wasn't expecting it to be really that soon. I thought, it was just going to be, one of those things you think happens, and again, I don't have like the entire lifetime of supporting Town that you do, like a lot of other Town fans do, obviously. But it felt like something that hopefully would happen one day. And I feel like I wasn't mentally ready for it to absolutely happen right now in a lot of ways. And that was kind of the magical.
I never thought I'd see it. I never ever thought I'd see us in the Prem ever in my entire lifetime.
It really felt like that was what was magical, about that season was it went from you feeling like that and me feeling like, well, maybe someday off in the distant future, this might happen. And then Wagner comes in and makes it clear that, no, this can happen right now. And like the team believed that it could happen right now. That season, no limits, as he said, like that this is a thing that is not a just wild fantasy. This is what this team can do right now. And to have that belief from the very beginning of that season, it was just an incredibly special thing. And again, an incredibly lucky thing, I think, for Town fans to be able to experience. Watching that final, again, I talked a lot with my family about being there. It killed me that I wasn't there. Plans are already in the works, let's say, if they make it to Wembley this season, for me to be there for that. I can't 100%, no like rubber stamp on the form yet, but we're working on that, I would say, if that happens. So, it still crushes me. Like I haven't, the DVR here. I haven't cut the cord. I'm still a lame old guy who has cable. But one of the perks of that is that I have a DVR that still has the championship final recorded on it. And so at least once every couple of months, like I gotta, fire it up and watch the shootout again. And, it crushes me that I wasn't there. But, that's the wonderful thing about this club is, I can see the joy on the faces of the fans who were there. I know, what that experience must have been like. And, there's so much of it. I feel like it just radiates off that, I'm able to experience at least a little bit of that, even here all by myself in the office, almost blacking out on my couch. It's still coming through. And, man, if they could do it again this year, man, it would really be something.
And what did you think of those 2 years there? Obviously the promotion year and the first year in the Prem, it was just a really special couple of years for the team and for the town.
At the end of the first season where they in the Premier League, where they stayed up, where, they beat Man United, eventually they get the draw at the Etihad, they get the draw at Stamford Bridge. My thought was, I defy you to show me any club in the entire, not just in England, but in the entirety of Europe, whose fans have had a better experience over the past 2 seasons. What club would you rather be a fan of over the past 2 seasons than the fan who got to watch David Wagner come in, got to watch that season where, there's so many huge wins, like, beating Brighton 3-1, winning at Newcastle basically to kind of, kickstart things at the beginning of the year, watching Wagner run down, the touchline to celebrate with the team multiple times, again, that Leeds win that, for me was really kind of formative. And then to finish that off with Schindler's penalty, at Wembley. And then that wasn't even the end of it, that we come back the next year and, that 3-0 at Palace to start the season was an out-of-body experience.
Me and my brother went to that game. It was absolutely incredible. Yeah,
Mooney's header was just, I could have flown through the ceiling. It's just like you spend that whole, summer just wondering like, okay, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to be able to hang in? What's it going to be like? And then they score twice in that opening half hour. And it's just like, and then they finally, cap it all off again with those big results at the end of the season and stay up. Ince's goal against Watford, it's just, at the end of all of that, I thought, if you're a Huddersfield Town fan and, you've been sort of through, as you said, things being flat, under Powell, under some of the other, managers, you've been through all those seasons in League One before they finally got promoted, and now you've experienced this rise, to the top of the mountain and then kind of staying there, with these results at the end of that first season in the Prem. Nobody in Europe surely had more fun, had more satisfaction, had more joy out of following their football club than Huddersfield Town fans did. It was just an absolutely amazing.
And then we have the unfortunate thing where Wagner leaves the club, and it was pretty devastating, to be honest, at the time.
Yeah.
What was your feeling on him leaving, and what did you think how did you feel the club was at the time?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was just a matter of when rather than if. I think by that point in the season, particularly after Moy's injury, like that was really, for me, when I think about that season, the turning point was when Moy got hurt. And, the squad just didn't have that sort of replacement lined up where you can replace a player who had been, the linchpin, by far, for my money, the most talented player other than Schindler, in the squad. Particularly in the midfield at that level, there's just no replacing Aaron Moy. And so once he got hurt, I think the writing was on the wall. So I think at that point, Town were getting relegated. And so the question was, does Wagner leave in the middle of the season? Does he leave at the end of the season? Does he leave, once they're like mathematically relegated? It's just really a matter of timing. And so it didn't bother me much. I know some Town fans definitely would have preferred him to stick around, to the end of the season or possibly even go down in the championship. But it's the way of the world. Eddie Howe got left Bournemouth once they, it was clear that they were going to go down. Just about every manager, once they're in the position that we know their teams are, going down, the manager doesn't stick around. Like, that's just kind of the way it works. And so, it didn't bother me all that much. I maybe would have liked to have seen them stick around for a few more games, make it even clearer, I guess, that like, okay, no, they really are just not going to stay up this season. But, I also don't think he just really had the squad to stay up that year. That you go back and look at that transfer window the summer before, and it was just a legendary disaster. Diakabi and Benza, the players that they spent money on, Ramadan Sobi. I will never feel more wrong than I remember watching a friendly before that season, and Sobi played a brilliant through ball in one of our preseason friendlies to Diakabi, who finished beautifully. And I thought, man, what great signings. I can't wait to watch these guys play for Town. And I've never been more wrong, obviously. It just, we talked about, the vibes, from the sort of hangover of going down. And, it wasn't just after they went down. The bad vibes were there that season, too. And you knew, the Cardiff game early in that season where, that was a must win, even I think it was like their second or third match of the season, but we knew Cardiff, was also going to be in the relegation battle. So it's a 6-pointer, like right off the bat. And, Wagner came out without any wingers and really only he played a really defensive formation. I think he really, it was basically like a 4-4-1-1 in that game where they just really did not have any attacking threat in the lineup at all. And it's kind of like, oh, Wagner really does not think they can score any goals. He's playing for like a 1-0 at home against Cardiff. It was like, okay, like he's not happy with this squad. And so I have a hard time blaming him. Like just the squad was not there to stay up that season. The money just was not well spent. And once you get in that position, I think, managers leaving is just kind of the way it goes. I wish they'd hired somebody. The problem for me was not Wagner leaving. It was hiring Jan Seward to replace him. That was really the problem. And obviously the problems in the transfer window before that.
Yeah, well, Wagner will always have a place in the hearts of all Huddersfield fans forever. Absolute.
Yeah.
Proper legend, just incredible guy. And you talk about Aaron Moy there. I mean, just exceptional player for Town. Absolutely incredible. We've had some brilliant plays over the year. My favourite is probably got to be Andy Booth. I also love Ronnie Jepson when he was playing. They sort of had a great partnership. That's what I remember when I was a kid, watching Town play. What did you think about Moy though, and the more recent player for Town?
Well, he was the guy who, we talk about pulling the strings, is the phrase that we use, because that's the way a player like Moy works, is that, the way he distributes the ball is he's not just pulling on the strings of the player who is getting the ball. And it's not just pulling on, the defenders near the ball. He's also pulling by making the passes that he makes. He's pulling the other guys, the opponents, away from one part of the field to where he can play the next ball. The fact that he did all the things he did in running midfield, but then also, just had such a sweet shot on him that you knew that, like, if he got into position, around the 18-yard box, like, he has a chance at basically any time to put it in the net. The goal in the first match against Leeds there in the promotion season, the goal against Newcastle at home, in the Premier League season once we'd gone up, that was the kind of player that you can build a team around. And I think the fact that Town stayed up that season was the proof in the pudding. He really was that caliber of player.
So this season, Jerry, like it's just been so good. The performance at Fulham probably stands out, the 2-1, but beating Cardiff in the last minute this year. I mean, those two games were back to back, but there's been so many amazing performances. Yeah. What do you think this year? What's happened? Why do you think it's worked?
It's a great question, and it's funny. Before the Fulham game, I was just kind of thinking about it, and I was like, so Town have played, I think at that point, 32 matches. They're fifth in the table, and, fifth in the table, not after 10 matches, not after 20 matches, after 32 matches. Like, we're 2/3 of the way plus through the season, and they're in the playoff places. They've advanced, to the final 16 of the FA Cup. They've beaten a Premier League team away on their way to that point. It's like, I thought to myself, objectively, this is an incredible season. Like, we're having a great season. So why do I merely feel happy about the season? Why do I merely feel kind of satisfied about the season? And I don't think I was alone in that. Like, I think that was kind of, the sense I got, from a lot of Town fans. And, it kind of came down to where Town hadn't yet had that really cathartic win, where it's just like they put everything together. They put together the performance that we know they're like capable of, and they don't just kind of hang on to a 1-0 win. Like, they did against West Brom, they did against, away to Forest, where they score the early goal and then they just kind of hang on. They don't scrape to a 1-0, like in the FA Cup over Barnsley, where, the opponent has a goal ruled out. I actually looked it up. Like, so they Holmes scored to put them up 2-0 against Hull on, I think, October 11th. And after that, they went like 12 matches and like more than 500 minutes ahead at 1-0 without scoring a second goal. They finally snapped that streak against Derby and beat them 2-0, but that was against 10 men. And so going into that Fulham match, I think this is why, it still feels like there's something missing from this season. As great as it's been, like, we're still missing that one victory. And I thought to myself, this is a heck of an opportunity. You're going away to Craven Cottage, clearly the best side in the division. Like, I don't think that's even debatable. If you want to make a statement, now's the time to make it. And they made it. That was by far the best performance of the season. All those struggles at going up 2-0. Again, they can't go up 2-0 against Barnsley at home, or against all these other teams that they'd gone up 1-0, Swansea at home, etc. And then they go away to Fulham and they're up 2-0 at halftime. It was just amazing, and they fully deserve that win. Like, the second goal is a penalty all day for me. I don't think there's any question about it. And so there was the cathartic win that we've been waiting for. And then to follow that up with the win, against Cardiff, where, John Russell, our new hero, steps up with a beautiful finish in injury time. It just really went from like, I'm waiting for this season to feel like 2016, 2017 again to, I feel like 2017 again. And, I don't think I'm alone in that either. I think, the belief now really is there. And when I look at the squad, I'm still at something of a loss, because I don't feel like there is that Aaron Moy. I don't necessarily feel like there is that Christopher Schindler that's at that really kind of top tier. But maybe they don't need them because of that collective spirit, like particularly the back line. The combination of Pearson and Lees and Colwell and Nichols, that combination and the chemistry that they've shown this season, you don't lead the division in clean sheets by accident. Like, those players maybe don't have the kind of big transfer fees or pedigree, or, on paper, they shouldn't be some of the best defenders, one of the best defensive teams in the division, but they clearly are. And that doesn't happen by accident. That's not just, opponents missing easy chances or anything. That's Nichols making the save. That's Pearson making the clearances. That's Lees being in the right position time and time again. That's how good they are. It did not happen by accident.
Everything at the minute is just incredible. It really does have sort of shades of the 2017 years.
Absolutely.
When we got to the Prem. So it's just a really, really good time to be a Town fan. And it's great. The whole it lifts everyone. It lifts the town. Everyone is sort of in a good mood when the club's doing well.
Yeah, you can tell. It's not always easy for me to gauge exactly what the atmosphere is like, since I'm, following the team over. I follow, I'm listening to Augie and Paul Glennon. We're getting some of the crowd shots, but it's not always the easiest thing to tell exactly what the atmosphere there in the JSS is. But this year it's coming through. You can tell the connection between the fans, between the players, the celebrations after the game. I have to laugh every single time Town do their celebration at the end, and then the fans from the other team always say, you're celebrating like you just won promotion or you just won the championship. And it's like, no, we're just celebrating the fact that there is this connection between the fans and the players. And if you don't think that's worth celebrating after a big win, that is 100% your problem. This is what being a sports fan of any team is about, is sharing that connection between the players and between the fans. This is why we follow football. This is why we are sports fans in the first place. So I always laugh when I see those kinds of comments. But that's definitely, I think, coming through. There's definitely shades of 2017 and then the first Premier League season when, just everybody was behind the team. And I think that starts with the performances of the players, that we've got players, I get a little bit nervous when I start hearing former players referred to as dead wood, because they're professionals. They put in a certain amount of effort. But, just to be completely honest, the vibes, for lack of a better word, coming from some players that, I don't think I have to spell out over the last couple of seasons that we picked up during those Premier League seasons, weren't really, I think, fully committed to slogging through various championship level relegation battles. Those vibes are gone. Yeah. In their place now, we've got the vibes from guys like Matty Pearson, guys like Sorba Thomas. Jonathan Hogg obviously is still there. We all know who Lewis O'Brien is and the sort of work rate he provides, the steadiness and the beautiful shithousery of Lee Nichols in goal. It's just those are guys who you can tell are fully 100% committed from the opening whistle to the very, end of the game. And that's where that connection comes from. That's why it's different. It's not just the wins, although obviously those help, but, the performances of the players and that level of commitment is what creates that atmosphere. It's what creates the wins. And then that's what creates those celebrations at the end of the game. It's all part and parcel. It's all together. And it's really just been a joy to watch this season.
And Carlos, can't not talk about Carlos, the manager. Just amazing he's been for us and the season that we're having now.
At the end of last season, there were a lot of people who said, well, they got to sack this guy. And I didn't think it was time for that. I wouldn't have complained if they had gone that route, because the end of last season was so dispiriting. But it just felt like, we know that, again, there's some dead wood on this team, that the vibes are not right. I think giving him one more season to see what he could do was going to be the right move. And it's been fantastic to watch him learn. That's the other thing, is that, it's not just young players that need experience. It's young managers that need experience too. They have to have the reps of let me come out with the tactics for this game. Let's, try to do this and see what works, especially at this level, what doesn't, as not just the assistant, but as the guy. That just takes a little bit of time sometimes. And I think, to go from literally, I think, the worst defense in the division to leading the division in clean sheets in the space of one offseason, again, all the credit, as much as you can heap on Nichols and Pearson and those guys. But that's also the organization from Corberon. He learned his lessons from last season. He learned from his mistakes. He's applied them this season, just expertly, just made so many right calls again and again. And I think you really have to tip your cap to the job he's done.
So, Jerry, the final question.
Sure.
Are we going to do it this season?
Yeah. Why not? I absolutely think right now they are likely to get into the playoffs. Town's record against the top teams in the division is not bad. They took 4 points off of Blackburn. They beat Forest away. They took 4 points off of Sheffield United. These are not teams that I think Town have anything really to be afraid of. Now, if a Bournemouth or a Fulham were somewhere in the playoffs, I would say that might be a different proposition. But I don't see any teams in the playoff mix that Town have anything to be afraid of. I think, that's not to say that, it's a cinch. I don't even know if Town, would be favored necessarily, but those are not teams that I would say, oh, well, Town have to be really fortunate. They have to, really like maybe get a worldie from outside the box and then hang on and have the opponent miss a whole bunch of chances. Those are teams that Town can play straight up. We've already seen that this season. I just really don't feel there's any team in that playoff mix that Town have to be afraid of. And when you have the trump card, I think, of particularly this defensive unit for Town, when you've got O'Brien and Hogg in front of that back four, sometimes back three, sweeping things up, I think we all know Town are not some swashbuckling attacking unit, that's going to, go into the playoffs and, rattle off a 3-1 victory or anything. But, man, if you've got that defense, it worked in 2017. Yeah. We got through the playoffs without actually scoring a goal. Why could it not happen again against what, honestly, I think it would be a weaker playoff field than what we saw 5 years ago? I absolutely, they can do it. Are they going to do it? Yes. Why not?
Jerry, this has been great. Thank you so much, man.
James, I've had a fantastic time, man.
If you're ever in Huddersfield, let's go.
I'll be back.
Let's go.
I'll be back.
Yeah, let's go watch the game. Definitely.
Let's do.
Awesome, Jay. All the best. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Yeah, bye.